To begin an NET session, we want to know what we're starting with, and that can be either a mental stressor or a physical stressor. So, in this example, we're working with a physical stressor, which is pain around the scapula or shoulder blade. So, next, we're going to double check the muscle test and make sure that we have a strong muscle test and a weak muscle test. So, here it's strong. Then, when I touch her forehead, the muscle does go weaker, and that tells us her body is ready to be worked on. So now we're going to create a circuit where I touch that problem area, and then I'm going to have her touch her forehead. So this is connecting the problem area to the emotional points. And if that changes the muscle test, then we know there's an emotional root cause. Now we want to figure out what the subject of that root cause is. So what I'm going to say here is let's check the concept of money, job, finance, career. If it's not in that category, then we move into the love category, which means is it related to a person in your life? And if it's neither one of those, then the subject is you and a role that you play in your life. In this case, the subject was her energy. So now we want to figure out what is the associated emotion to her energy. So you see here, I'm going to touch different parts of her body to figure out what meridian that emotion is in. And so it happened to be the first one I checked, which is right in front of her shoulder, which is the middle meridian. And so now I'm going to say, well, let's check the concept of the emotions in that meridian. So in this case, the emotion was grief, and it was her grief. We can be sensitive to others' emotions, and so sometimes the emotion does actually belong to somebody else, but in this case, it was her grief. Now we want to know, how is the subject and the emotion connected? So for her, can you put grief and your energy in a way that makes sense to you? And that's what we're discussing, is what does that mean for her? And you're going to see me muscle test a few times through this because I'm trying to see what is actually true in this moment for her in her body. Because somebody could connect their emotion and subject multiple ways, but maybe only one of them is relevant in that time. And once we get to a little bit closer to that root, I'm going to say, well, what's the worst part about that? Or what's the hardest part about that? And that's a little bit like, so what? Why does that bother you? What is so hard about that? Which is totally valid, whatever the answer is. I just want to know for her, why is that hard? Because my answer might be different. And for her, the grief and the energy were connected because when there's grief, it just sucks the energy out. And once we have that root piece, we want to take that and see if there's an original event before this current period in time where there was a similar pattern or a similar emotional dynamic. And for her, there wasn't. It wasn't a present moment. So, what I'm going to have her do is stick with this current emotion, and she's going to connect the meridian point where we found her emotion to the emotional points on her forehead. And I'm going to have her process and breathe through that emotion. And so all I'm having her do is just feel that grief, feel how it feels to have her energy sucked out due to grief, and breathe through it. She's not changing anything. She's not trying to just make herself okay with it. She's not repressing. It really is inviting that emotion to the surface to just sit with it and feel it. And I'm tapping a few levels of her spine that are correlated to that emotion to help her body process it. And once I'm done tapping, I'm going to let her sit with that as long as she needs to. On average, it takes about 90 seconds for somebody to process an emotion, but sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, and it's all okay. It's all different for each person. So I just sit and wait while she finishes processing that. And you know you're done when you feel a shift, or you feel lighter, or you feel more peace around that emotion. So now that she's done processing, we're going to work backwards. So I'm going to first have her go back into that same exact emotion that she was just breathing through. And we want to see a strong muscle test after that. And now we're going to check and see if there's any other emotions other than grief that are related. So in this case for her, there was no other emotions. Now we're going to check for, does her body need homeopathy to help support her healing through this processing, through this emotion? For her, no, she did not need any homeopathy, but those are what those spray bottles are on the shelves behind us. And now we're going to go back to that original spot on her shoulder blade to see, is there a change? So here we have a strong muscle, and then we're going to have another strong muscle when she checks the emotional points. So that tells us we've created a shift And she has started to process, and she may or may not notice a big difference at this moment, but her body is continuing to process that emotion. So now I'll let you hear what she has to say about what she feels in her body after doing NET.
Okay, cool. So there'll be a slight shift because that's what I've noticed with any of our sessions. It's never this like, oh, it's like, it's that weird, subtle, just shift like, oh, I think I'm good. I think I'm better. Like, it's not, this dramatic, like, I'm a new person. It's,
Mhm.
so that's why I think it's cool because you're almost like, oh, yeah. I mean, very much to me, like how the adjustments can be like you don't instantly, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't feel that anymore. What
Yeah.
happened? And this is like, oh, I don't feel that anymore. Oh, weird. Even when you try to.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's like, wait, how long have I been feeling better? Like it will
Yeah.
sneak up on you until you have to
Yeah.
remind
Or
yourself.
I'll look at some things because we've done a few things. Like I'll look at a few things and be like, wait, I don't have an issue with that anymore. Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
So there most often isn't a huge dramatic shift after NET. It's not like she said, I feel like a whole new person. It's really just allowing your body to connect these pieces it's been trying to connect and it's been looping on for potentially years, and finally closing them down so that they're not running in the background and they're not causing grief and they're not causing irritations or causing pain, and just allowing the body to feel peace. And really, what's happening is that system is finally regulating after looping on this emotion for so long.